Incredible game for Trevor Lawrence. He should be offensive player of the week, no doubt. Welcome to Just the Stats, NFL Top 10's for Tuesday. Good morning. My name's Ernie, and we are going to look at some more of the NFL games. We're going to stick to the games on Sunday. I know there was a game last night. I will probably talk about that tomorrow. In fact, I know I will. But I wanted to get through these games on Sunday, 6 of them I'm hoping to do today. The reason it's taking longer, I'm trying to keep this podcast, even though it went 40 minutes yesterday, I'm trying to keep it under 40 minutes. I wanted 30, but there's just so much information lately to cover. And that's because not only do we have NFL top 10s, team top 10s for career-wise, we also have now top 10s for the season, whether it's NFL or for their teams. As we get toward the end of this season, that's starting to come into play. And so we need to track that as well, which then means it takes a little longer to cover the games. Plus, I want to give a little more in-depth coverage of what happened in the game as far as the stats go and so forth. So with all that, it just takes more time to cover every game. Plus, every team played. We didn't have a bye week, so there was every team was playing, and only one on Thursday and then the rest on Sunday. Now this week coming up, we've got some games on Saturday as well, so that'll split it up a little bit. And but still, a lot of games to cover as we get nearer and nearer the playoffs. I can't wait to also on Wednesday look at standings as well. So I want to fit that in and look at the playoff scenarios. Down to 3 games to go. And there was a lot of changes, as well as, a lot of changes in who's in first, as well as teams dropping out, no longer playoff eligible, been eliminated, including, amazingly, and no one would have even dreamed this was even possible at the beginning of the season, but the Kansas City Chiefs are out of the playoffs. So they are done. And sadly for them, their quarterback is really done with his torn Achilles. He's going to be out the rest of this year, and obviously he's going to need all next year to rehabilitate, and hopefully he'll be back and ready to go start of next season. But rough season for Kansas City. And but they'll be back. You know they will. And we'll have to see how it goes next year. All right, so with that, let's get started. If you missed yesterday's podcast, that's where you can get coverage of Cleveland versus Chicago, Baltimore versus Cincinnati, Chargers versus Kansas City, Buffalo versus New England, and Washington versus the Giants. So if you want to hear about those games, go to my podcast from yesterday, which you can get at Just the Stats NFL, which you can find on YouTube if you want to watch the video version and see the charts about those different games, or you can just listen to it wherever you do on Apple, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you might use. Today, we're going to cover the Raiders versus the Eagles, the Jets versus the Jaguars, Cardinals versus the Texans, Packers versus the Broncos, the Panthers versus the Saints, and the Lions versus the Rams. So some important games there. So let's get going with that. So we will start with a wipeout here by the Eagles over the Las Vegas Raiders. Eagles win this game 31-0. This was a horrible game. The Raiders have packed it in. They are done. They're 2-12. They're going to have a complete massive turnover when the season ends. Carroll's gone. You know he's got to be gone. That was a huge flop of an idea. New quarterback, they're going to have to come up with a new quarterback, offensive line. I mean, it's just a terrible. Looking at the game, Eagles had this game wrapped up. Well, was one of those games where they could have stopped at halftime. It was 17-0. They ended up winning 31-0. The Las Vegas Raiders, 46 yards of rushing in the game and 64 yards passing for a total of 110 yards of offense in this game. Okay. Well, obviously, you're not going to win with 110 yards of offense. That's just terrible. Kenny Pickett, 15 for 25, so, over 50%. 64 yards, though. 64 yards. Let me look at this chart over here of that game. 64 yards. That's 2.6 yards per attempt. Had one interception, sacked 4 times, quarterback rating of 47.9. On the other hand, Jalen Hurts had almost a perfect passer rating. Only threw the ball 15 times, had 12 completions, 175 yards, 11.7 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, quarterback rating of 154.9. Well, that's just, that's amazing. Now in this game, rushing, Ashton Jeanty, 9 carries, 35 yards, so almost 4 yards a carry. Considering, that they had a total of 46 yards, I guess that's not too bad. Saquon Barkley, 22 carries for 78 yards, 3.5 yards a carry, did have 1 touchdown as well. So they actually did not run the ball that well. Bigsby, 17 carries for 57 yards. Obviously, that's because, they sat Barkley down for health reasons. I mean, it's no point in having him out there playing. But as a team, 47 rushes, 183 yards, 3.89 yards a carry. So not even 4 yards. So as far as that goes, it wasn't that great a game. But in this game, the Raiders had the ball for 20.5 minutes. The Eagles, 39.5 minutes. So almost double the amount of time. That's just how bad the Raiders were. Just no offense. Kenny Pickett's no answer. I mean, Geno Smith obviously is nothing either, but kind of makes Kenny Pickett made Geno Smith look good. For the Eagles, as far as receiving goes, we'll go to the Raiders. Brock Bowers, if you had him, he had 6 catches. That's good on 8 targets, but only 28 yards. 28 yards on 6 catches. Wow. And then Ashton Jeanty, 4 catches for 7 yards. So he accounted for the most yards on the team with 42. Touched the ball 13 times, had 42 yards. Now for the Eagles, Dallas Goedert was definitely the guy. 6 catches, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. No one else had more than 2 catches in the game. That was Saquon. There were several players, including Saquon Barkley. A.J. Brown had 2 catches for 41 yards and a touchdown, so that counted for the 3 touchdowns. Really a wipeout. Now in this game, Crosby, though, the one standout on defense that they do have, had a sack. And not a sack, he had a tackle for loss. So he moves up in this season all time. He's now in tie, where he's in 8th place all time in tackles for loss with 26 tackles for loss. You're talking about rarefied air here when you make it in the top 10 all times in tackles for loss with 26. DeMarcus Ware has 27. That'll be next player up for him. And as I said last week, he'd be an MVP candidate on defense if it wasn't for Myles Garrett, who now has 32 tackles for loss, which is second all-time in NFL history, only behind J.J. Watt, who had 39. Now, 3 games to go. That's a lot of tackles for loss to get 7 to tie Watt, but he does have a commanding lead on second because third is J.J. Watt, who had 29. Twice he did that. So Max Crosby has a chance. 3 games to go, gets a tackle for loss a game. He could actually tie J.J. Watt for third. So that was one positive, if none else, for the Raiders. Now, for the Eagles, Jalen Watts. Jalen Watts. I'm combining names here. Jalen Hurts. He needed, this is a negative one, unfortunately. He was sacked one time in the game, which moved him ahead of Carson Wentz into 5th place all-time in Philadelphia Eagles history of quarterback being sacked with 180. Next up is Norm Snead, who played in the 60s. He had 181 sacks. So that was probably the only negative, because he did have a quarterback rating that was almost perfect, but was sacked that one time. Now, also in this game, on a positive note, Dallas Goedert got 6 receptions in this game to move ahead of Brent Selleck, who played from 2007 to 2017. He had 398 receptions. Dallas Goedert, now with those 6, has 403, so past the 400 reception mark to move into 5th place all-time in receptions for the Eagles. Now, next up for him is Brian Westbrook with 426. That's 23 receptions in 3 games. That's probably doubtful, but it's a possibility. Also in this game, Devontae Smith. So you've got 2 Eagles here on the top 10 all-time in receptions for the Eagles. And Devontae Smith had made it last week. Well, he's in 9th. He was in 9th. He had 2 catches. Didn't have to have but 1. Had 2 to move ahead of Pete Pajos, who played in the 40s and 50s. Devontae Smith now has 374 receptions to move into 8th place all-time in receptions. So he is gaining ground on Dallas Goedert. Not this week. He actually lost some ground. But you got 2 players here. And A.J. Brown's not far behind. He might be next year before he makes the top 10 as far as receptions go. Next up for Devontae Smith is Deshaun Jackson, who played from 2008 to 2020. He needs 5 receptions to catch him. And then it'll be back-to-back Goedert and Smith once he passes him. So good game for those 2 players. I mean, obviously Smith and Goedert could have had even more, but they didn't need. I mean, the Eagles did not need to throw the ball. All right, let's move on to our next game, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the New York Jets. This game was in Jacksonville. They were the host, and they were not very nice hosts to the Jets. They really beat them pretty badly. Halftime, it was 31-10, and they just piled it on some more after that, and ended up being 48-20. Really a good game for the Jaguars. Incredible game for Trevor Lawrence. He should be offensive player of the week, no doubt. Let's see. Let's look at those numbers. Jacksonville had 438 yards of offense. Jets had 284. Now, the Jaguars rushed for 108 yards total, but that's because they just threw the ball. I mean, the Jets, I guess their goal, which caused their defensive coordinator to be fired yesterday, but their plan was, we'll stop the run and let Lawrence beat us if he can, and he did. Passing wise, Jacksonville had 330 yards of passing on 20 for 32 by Lawrence. It was just a dominating game for him. 20 completions, 32 attempts, 330 yards. That's over 10 yards an attempt. 5 passing TDs. No sacks in the game. Quarterback rating of 136.7. And then to top it off, he led the team in rushing with 5 attempts for 51 yards. So another 10 yards there. He had a touchdown rushing as well. So he had a total of 6 touchdowns, which tied Josh Allen, who had 6 touchdowns in a game. His was 3 rushing, 3 passing. Trevor Lawrence, 5 passing, 1 rushing, but only other player this season to have 6 TDs. Also broke the Jaguars record for most touchdowns by a single player, passing and rushing, and tied Blake Bortles for most passing touchdowns in a game with 5. So a lot of records being set by Trevor Lawrence. There was another record I heard, which is kind of a crazy one. Only player in NFL history to pass for over 300 yards, have 5 rushing touchdowns, rush for more than 50 yards, and have a rushing touchdown. No one else has ever done that in NFL history. I don't know where they figure these kind of things out, but it's not a stat you're really keeping track of too much. But anyway, it's still a good thing to see. But because of the way the Jets played, they just threw the ball, and there was nothing the Jets could really do about it. Trevor Lawrence, 20 completions, 3 drops, though, I believe, in this game. So he would have even had a better completion percentage and more yards. All right. So that's Trevor Lawrence. As far as Brady Cook coming in, he actually didn't have bad numbers. Well, completion percentage-wise, 22 completions on 33 attempts, but only 5 yards per attempt. Had 1 touchdown pass, but 3 interceptions, sacked 3 times as well, quarterback rating of 52.1. And honestly, in the second half, the Jaguars were letting up a little bit, other players getting some playing time. So, I don't know if he could have done that well if it would have been a closer game. In the rushing department, now the Jets did rush 32 times for 130 yards, 4 yards a carry. But the Jaguars shut down Breece Hall. 12 carries for Breece Hall, 23 yards, not even 2 yards a carry. And one of those carries was 13 yards. So he had 11 carries for 10 yards the rest of the time. Now, Isaiah Davis did come in for 9 carries and had 58 yards. That's where one was a 24-yard touchdown run. Brady Cook had 6 carries for 39 yards, so they actually did better. But, Breece Hall's their star, had the most carries, and they shut him down. Now, on the other hand, the Jaguars' running game wasn't that great either. They did average 4 yards a carry, 27 attempts for 108 yards, but their goal was, if the Jets' goal was to stop them from running, they still gained 100 yards. But that was because Trevor Lawrence had 5 carries for 51 yards, so he had half the yards. Travis Etienne didn't really have a good game either. Rushing, I should say, 12 carries, 32 yards, only 2.67 yards a carry. But Travis Etienne, when it comes to receiving, had 3 catches for 73 yards for 3 touchdowns, and one was both of them were great. One was he just juked a guy, went right by him, running with it, 45-yard touchdown. But he also had another touchdown, which he caught over his shoulder in the end zone. It was a great catch, and this is from a running back. Really was an excellent catch. But so he ended up with a total of 73 and 109 yards of offense. So a good game overall for him. For the Jets, Adonai Mitchell and Isaiah Williams had 6 catches apiece. Mitchell had 58 yards. Williams had 53. Now, Adonai Mitchell had 6 catches, 58 yards, and did have 1 touchdown. So not too bad. But other than that, really, 22 receptions, 176 yards of total receiving yards. Now, for the Jaguars, Jacoby Myers has just been so good. 5 catches on 7 targets, 71 yards for him. That's 14 yards a attempt, or a reception, I should say. Brian Thomas had 4 catches, 66 yards. 1 was a touchdown. Really looking good. And then, like I said, Travis Etienne, 3 catches, 73. Parker Washington had a great catch as well on a 33-yard pass. 3 catches, 53 yards. I mean, that catch wasn't the catch so much. It was that Trevor Lawrence was running, falling away from a defender, and it just heaved it to a spot. But Parker Washington was running straight for that spot. So, Trevor Lawrence knew he was going to be there, dropped it right in on him, and Parker Washington caught it. So, great game for the Jaguars all around. Obviously, you're talking about the Jets, who are 3-11. Jaguars are now 10-4. Jaguars have a huge game against the Denver Broncos in Denver, so that'll be a game, a real test for them. All right, so Trevor Lawrence needed 1 passing touchdown for the season, and obviously got 5 of them. So He now has 23 passing touchdowns, which puts him third all-time in Jaguars history for passing touchdowns. Next up is he said his best season was in 2022, and that's what everybody's been comparing this to. But in 2022, he had 25. Now, Blake Bortles holds the record with 35 passing touchdowns. He's not going to get that. He'd have to have 4 passing touchdowns per game, and I don't see that happening. But he should be able to get at least a couple more to move to have his second best total ever. And for career-wise, he also needed 2 passing touchdowns, and he needed 1 rushing touchdown as well. But in passing touchdowns, when I find them, man, I don't know why I don't have these up here already. Passing touchdowns, Trevor Lawrence needed just 2 to tie David Garrard for third all-time. David Garrard had 89 passing touchdowns in his career with the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence had 5, so he jumped from 87 to 92 passing touchdowns to move into third all-time in passing touchdowns for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Next up is Blake Bortles, who has 103, so he needs 11 more. I don't know if he's going to catch him this year. It'd be great if he did, because that means he's throwing a lot of touchdown passes. Hang on one second. Oh, here we go. Rushing touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence had 1 rushing touchdown. Travis Etienne didn't have any. Trevor Lawrence now is in 5th place. He was tied for 5th with Stacey Mack with 19 rushing touchdowns, but with 1 more, he's now got 20. He's 5th place all-time by himself. Travis Etienne is 4th with 25. So those are your top 2 Jaguars in rushing touchdown department. Now, Travis Etienne in the all-touchdown category for the Jaguars, well, with 3 receiving touchdowns, he jumped over Keenan McCardell, who played in 96 to 2001, who had 30 touchdowns total. Travis Etienne with 3 more from Sunday has 31 in total touchdowns for the Jaguars to move into 6th place all-time. Next up for him is Mercedes Lewis, who played from 2006 to 2017. He's got 33. So Travis Etienne only needs 2 more touchdowns, rushing or receiving, and he'll move into 5th place. So good game for him. And we'll move on to the next game, and that's the Houston Texans versus Arizona Cardinals. This game was in Houston, and this is another game where Houston just walloped Arizona. I mean, it's 40-20. It just wasn't a competitive game, really. And like I said, Houston Texans win 40-20. Now, in this game, I mean, Arizona just didn't have the manpower to handle the defense of Houston or even their offense, which was one of the best offensive outputs that Houston's had in quite a while. Now, in this game, Arizona did rack up over 300 yards against the Houston defense. Houston had 399 yards, 43 rushing, 256 passing. All right, let's look at some of the numbers here. Jacoby Brissett, 27 completions on 40 attempts. So he was passing that ball a lot. And they really have to. They don't have any running backs. Every running back they have gets hurt, it seems like. Michael Carter ended up being their leading rusher in this game. It's been DeMarcado, it was Benson, it was Connor. You know, it's just been everybody. But it's back to Brissett, 27 completions, 40 attempts, 249 yards. That's 6 yards per attempt, 3 touchdown passes, but 1 interception, only sacked twice, quarterback rating of 98.9. CJ Stroud, 22 completions, so 5 fewer completions than Brissett on 29 attempts for 260 yards. So that's 9 yards per attempt, so 3 yards more. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, sacked only 1 time. Quarterback rating of 137.1. So really good game for him. In the running game for Arizona, Michael Carter, like I said, 14 carries, 56 yards. That's 4 yards a carry. And after that, it was just a bunch of people, no more than 2 or 3 carries. Now for Houston, Marks got hurt and could have come back in, they say, but he had 7 carries for 30 yards. But then Jawar Jordan came in, 15 carries, 101 yards. One was a 50-yarder. So really good there. 33 carries for the team, 143 yards, which is 4.33 yards per carry. So not bad. Now in the receiving department, wow, Trey McBride, even the Houston Texans can't stop him. 12 receptions, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was targeted 13 times. Now, Michael Wilson was targeted 11 times, but only had 5 catches for 54 yards, but he also had a touchdown. He's been playing so well since he's been put in the game. Those two led the team by far as receptions and yards go. Now, for Houston, Dalton Schultz has been doing quite well. 8 catches, 76 yards, and a touchdown. And Nico Collins only had 3 catches, but for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's not bad. You get 3 catches and 2 of them are touchdowns. So turns out to be a pretty good game for you. Like I said, 22 receptions in this game for them, 260 yards and 3 touchdowns. So really good game for Houston. They move now. They're just a game behind the Jaguars. And honestly, the Texans play another easy team. I forgot who it was, but somebody it's Las Vegas, I believe. So that should be an easy win for them. And then while the Jaguars are playing the Broncos, and if the Jaguars lose, Houston wins, I think Houston moves into first place. All right, let's look at the bright spot for Arizona in this game. That's Trey McBride, who had needed 7 catches on the season to add to his total. He came into the game in 16th all-time in receptions for the Arizona Cardinals with 93, got 12 more to now has 105, which jumps him all the way up to 6th spot ahead of Larry Fitzgerald, who dominates this team for most times on the top 10 list, even though one of them is going to get dropped off now. But with 105 receptions now for Trey McBride, that puts him into 6th spot. He only needs 10 more receptions to catch DeAndre Hopkins, who in 2020 had 115. That's the most by an Arizona Cardinal. He should easily get that. He might get that in 1 week since he had 12 this past week, but I don't see any reason he doesn't break this record for the Arizona Cardinals. Also in this game for Houston, on the other hand, Will Anderson didn't have a sack, so he stayed at 28.5, which was 5th all-time in Houston Texans history. Danielle Hunter needed a half. He got 1 sack to move him up ahead of Jonathan Grenard, who had 23. Daniel Hunter now has 24 sacks to move into 7th place all-time. So they are 2 Houston Texans on the top 10 in sacks. Really a very dominating defense. And, another game where they might have played a lot tougher, but they had a big lead, and they just kind of stretched it out and won easily, 40-20. All right, let's move on to the next game. That is the Green Bay Packers visiting the Denver Broncos. This was quite a game. It's one of those games, there were several of them. The New England-Buffalo game where it looked like New England was going to win that game easily and ended up losing. The same thing happened with the Rams game where they beat Detroit, even though Detroit looked like they were going to win it initially. Well, this was another game where Denver was losing to Green Bay, and that game, it just flipped in second half, and Denver came back and won it. Big game for them. Now, they now have the best record in the NFL as the Patriots lost. But this game at halftime, actually Denver at halftime was losing only 13-14 or 16-14. And then Green Bay comes in with another score to make it 23-14. And then after that, so they're up by 9 in the third quarter, but after that, they just could not keep pace. And Denver came on strong and ended up winning 34-26. So in this game, it was really both defenses were not that impressive, honestly. Denver had 391 yards of offense. Green Bay had 362 yards of offense. And mostly it came from the passing game. Rushing wise, net yards rushing for Green Bay, 115. Denver had 89. Now, in this game, Green Bay had a problem with penalties, 10 penalties for 72 yards. You just can't do that. That's just too many penalties. You're fighting yourself as well as the other team, and it costs you. Now, looking at some of the numbers, Jordan Love did not have that great of a game. 24 completions on 40 attempts, 276 yards. That's 7 yards per attempt. 1 touchdown, but 2 interceptions. Sacked 3 times. Quarterback rating of 68.3. Yeah, really a bad game. He really needed to have a big game to beat the Broncos. And he started out hot and just couldn't keep it up. Watson got hurt, went out of the game, and that also seemed to affect the Packers' offense. Now, Bo Nix, 23 completions on 34 attempts, 302 yards, almost 9 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, wasn't sacked. Really excellent game by Bo Nix. He's had a good year. These quarterbacks that came out last year, Drake May, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, to name 3 of them. There's more, but man, they really do look good their second year. Daniels was another one, but he's been hurt too much. He had a good first year. This year hasn't been a very good season for him, but most of the time he's been not even playing because he gets injured. So otherwise, but these quarterbacks from this year could be some really impressive quarterbacks as the years go by. But Bo Nix had a quarterback rating of 134.7. Now in the running game, Josh Jacobs had a good game, 12 carries. Too bad they didn't run him more. 73 yards and a touchdown. One was a 40-yard rushing touchdown against the Denver Broncos. For Denver, R.J. Harvey, 19 carries for 65 yards. So that's only 3.4 yards a carry. Did have a rushing touchdown. Bo Nix had 7 carries for 10 yards. So that was their second leading running back. Same for Green Bay. Jordan Love, 3 carries, 29 yards, second leading rusher. In the receiving department, this is the Packers' way of doing things. It's like the Buffalo Bills. Just everybody had a catch. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 players caught a pass. Jaden Reed led the team with 5 catches on 55 yards. Luke Musgrave, 4 catches, 52 yards. Those are your top 2 players. Josh Jacobs had 2 catches, 19 yards, and 1 was a touchdown. So he accounted for most of the yards, 19. He had 92 yards of offense out of Josh Jacobs to lead the team. Now for Denver, a couple players here, but Courtland Sutton really had a good game, had some good catches too. Really tough catches. 7 catches, 113 yards, and 1 touchdown. Troy Franklin, 6 catches, 85 yards, and also had a touchdown. Those are your top 2 players. Now, Jordan Humphrey had 3 catches, 42 yards, had the other touchdown. And Michael Bandy, 1 catch, 20 yards, had a touchdown. Those are your 4 touchdowns. All right, now in this game, there wasn't a lot, but career-wise, Bo Nix was in 10th spot all time in passing touchdowns for the Denver Broncos. Well, with 4 more, he moves to 52 passing touchdowns, which puts him into a tie for 7th, believe it or not, already. In only his second year, he's 7th all-time in Denver Bronco history in passing touchdowns with 52. Next up for him is Jay Cutler, who had 54. Now, Courtland Sutton, who's been moving up this list this year, the receiving yards, most receiving yards by Denver Bronco in their career. Well, he had another 113, so he's now got 6,226 yards receiving to move into 5th place all-time for the Denver Broncos. Man, he's went all the way up to 5th now. probably as far as he's going to get, because Lionel Taylor, who played in the 60s, has over 6,800 yards. So he needs a good 600 yards plus, which won't happen in the next 3 games. But Cortland Sutton, now 5th all-time in receiving yards with 6,226 for the Denver Broncos. All right. This next game won't take long. Man, this division with Carolina and Tampa, they're seeing who really wants it. Right now, it doesn't seem like either team really wants it. Carolina had a big chance to win this game and take overall first place all by themselves. But they lost to the New Orleans Saints 20-17. Second time they've lost to them this season. Carolina Panthers are 7-7 now. New Orleans Saints 4-10. The Saints have a pretty decent defense. Now, the Saints came back in this game with 10 points in the fourth quarter to win at 20-17. So nice win for them. Now, in this game, Saints had 337 yards of offense. Carolina Panthers 281. They had a lot of decent rushing, Carolina did, and that's what they want to do is run the ball, and they had 127 yards rushing. And they did, man, they had this game, halftime, they're winning 10-7. They're up 17-7 in the third quarter, and then here comes here comes New Orleans Saints back to win it 20-17. So really an impressive comeback by the Saints. Nothing major. I mean, this is just incredible. Carolina, here's another team that beat themselves, though New Orleans Saints also had a lot of penalties. Carolina Panthers, 11 penalties for 103 yards. Not good at all. Had a fumble lost. In this game, Bryce Young, 15 completions on 24 attempts, 163 yards, 6.8 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, only sacked once, had a quarterback rating of 96.4, which isn't bad. Tyler Schaff, and somebody mentioned it in the podcast, not in the podcast, but at the game, he should have been starting probably earlier. But 24 completions on 32 attempts, that's an impressive percentage. 272 yards passing, 8.5 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, was sacked 5 times, had a quarterback rating of 110.4, which is really good. In the running department, Rico Dowdle led the Panthers, but really 16 carries for 49 yards, so just over 3 yards a carry. Did have a rushing touchdown. Bryce Young, believe it or not, had 7 carries for 49 yards, so the same amount of yards, which is what lifted this team's average over 4 yards a carry, because Chuba Hubbard had 8 carries for 29 yards, so neither of the running backs averaged over 4 yards. Now for the Saints, they've been devastated with injuries, and without they just don't have a good running back. I'll put it that way. Tyler Schaff led the team with 8 carries for 32 yards. Devin Neal, their running back, had 7 carries for 28 yards, and it just went down from there. 25 carries, 81 yards. So they did try to consistently run it, but just about 3.25 yards per attempt. In the receiving department, Tedero McMillan's a guy, but they're not throwing the ball much. No one had more than 4 targets. 3 players had 4 targets in this game. Now, Jalen Coker caught all his targets, 4 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown. So he had the lone touchdown. That led the team in receptions and in yards. Not much to say there. Now, for Saints, Chris Olave's had a good season this year. It seems like he gets injured a lot, but he's had a good season. 6 catches, 85 yards, 1 touchdown. He was targeted the most, had the most receptions. Now, Devon Vele, 5 catches, 69 yards for him. Those are your top 2 players on the team as far as receptions and targets. All right, now in this game, not much to talk about as far as top 10s go. Bryce Young needed one passing touchdown to move into the top 10 all-time in Carolina Panthers history for this season. Well, he got the one. He's now tied for ninth with 5 other quarterbacks, though, with 19 touchdown passes. So one more, he'll move into ninth all by himself. 2 more, he catches Cam Newton for 8th. Cam Newton dominates his list, though Steve Berline has the most in a single season, which is 36. All right, let's move on from that game. Now, this was a huge game. I didn't want to end with the Panthers and the Saints. They're just not this game. But let's look at the LA Rams and Detroit Lions. This was in LA. Detroit came in there. They needed this game. Man, they needed to win it. They did not. It looked good for the start. They were winning at halftime 24-17. But in the third quarter, the Rams just put it on them. 17 unanswered points in the third quarter to just pull away. Another touchdown in the fourth quarter. Man, Stafford's hard to stop. You stop him early, and they had that interception early in the game. But too much offense for the Rams. They're now 11-3. Detroit Lions dropped to 8-6. Now in this game, wow, the Rams, who have a pretty good defense, but they gave up 396 yards of offense to the Detroit Lions, but the Rams had 519 yards of offense themselves. Both of these teams are 2 of the highest scoring teams in the NFL. So you could understand the score. Rushing, the Rams had 159 yards rushing. The Lions were shut down, 70 yards of net yards rushing in this game. Passing yards, net yards, 326 for Lions, 360 for the Rams. That's net yards. So let's look at some of those numbers. Now in this game, one other number, time of possession, 33.5 minutes for the Rams, 26.5 for the Lions. So dominated there. Pretty good game. Now looking at the quarterbacks, both had pretty good games. Jared Goff, 25 completions on 41 attempts for 338 yards. That's 8 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, was sacked only once, had a quarterback rating of 111.6. Now, this was a fun game to watch because you're talking about these 2 quarterbacks. Stafford used to play for the Lions and Goff used to play for the Rams. So now they're playing for the other teams, and it's kind of a fun thing to watch. Now, Stafford, 24 completions on 38 attempts, 368 yards, 9.7 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, had that 1 interception, and he had a quarterback rating of 101.6. So both of them had pretty good games. But another 2 touchdown passes for Stafford. Now in the running game, like I said, Detroit was shut down. Gibbs, 13 carries for 38 yards. That's not even 3 yards a carry. David Montgomery, 7 carries for 32 yards. So he did a little better, 4.5 yards a carry, and he also had a rushing touchdown. For the Rams, now Kyren Williams, 15 carries for 78 yards. That's 5.2 yards. Had 2 rushing touchdowns. Blake Corum, 11 carries for 71 yards. That's 6.45 yards per carry, and also had a touchdown. So their running backs did quite well. Puka Nacua had 2 carries for 8 yards. To add to his total of receptions, 9 catches for 181 yards. So he ended up with a total of 189 yards of offense, touched the ball 11 times. 9 catches, 181 yards. No touchdowns, though, amazingly. Also for the Rams, Colby Parkinson, 5 catches, 75 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had the 2 touchdowns. Now, Devontae Adams was having a good game, 4 catches, 71 yards, but then went out with an injury. Hopefully it's not too bad and he can come back. He might miss, I think they play on Thursday, so it's looking kind of doubtful that Adams plays on Thursday. But hopefully with 2 weeks off, he'll be ready to go after that. Now for the Lions receiving, Amon-Ra St. Brown matched Puka Nacua pretty well, as did Jameson Williams. St. Brown, 13 catches, 164 yards, 2 touchdowns for him. And then Jameson Williams, 7 catches, 134 yards, and a touchdown. So those two had 298 of the 338 yards between them. Gibbs had 20 yards receiving to tack on with his 38 yards rushing. So a total of 58 yards. Still not that good. No touchdowns, unfortunately. All right. Those are some of the stats. I mean, there was a ton. And when you're looking at this overall for the Detroit Lions, we'll start with them. Goff, this season alone, needed 1 passing touchdown to move into the top 10. Well, he was already tied actually for 9th. The 3 players tied with 26 touchdowns. Well, he had 3 more. He's now got 29, which moves him up into a tie with Matthew Stafford for 29 passing touchdowns in a single season. Stafford did it twice in 2012 and 2013. Now, Jared Goff had 30 touchdowns in 2023. That's the next goal here, but he's got 29 now. Matthew Stafford holds the record with 41, so he won't catch that. He'd need to have 4 touchdowns a game the next 3 games, and that's very doubtful. But Jared Goff moving higher up the top 10 in passing touchdowns for the Lions. Now, on a career level, this is a negative. He was sacked only once, Jared Goff, only 1 sack in this game, but it was good enough time for 5th all-time with Charlie Batch with 147 sacks. So he's moving up to 5th place there. I don't know how much higher he'll go in the next 3 games. Matthew Stafford holds the record, though, with 385 times being sacked as a Detroit Lion. Now, in rushing yards, despite the fact that Gibbs only had 38 yards, he needed only 33 yards to move up and pass James Jones all-time in rushing yards for the Detroit Lions. So with 38 yards, Jahmyr Gibbs now has 3,457 rushing yards to put him in 6th all-time in Detroit Lions history as far as rushing yards go. He's had a good career. Not a good game this time, but a good career so far. Now, for the Rams, Matthew Stafford continues to just move up this list. He had another 2 touchdowns, so he now has 37 touchdowns for the Los Angeles Rams this season alone, which puts him into 3rd all-time in passing touchdowns. Stafford and Warner hold the record with 41 passing touchdowns in a single season. So Stafford only needs 4 more to tie, 5 more to break the record, and he should get it. I mean, he's averaging 3 touchdowns a game, just about. So it shouldn't be a problem. Give him 2 games, and he should have this record and move it well above 41 as the total. Now, in the receiving department, he's got all kinds of season numbers going on here. Puka Nacua only needed 1 reception. Yeah, he only needed 1 reception. He was tied for 8th all-time with 93 with Terry Holt, who did it twice. Well, he got 9 receptions. Now, Puka Nacua has 102 receptions this season to put him into a tie for 5th all-time with 102. Next up is Puka Nacua, who in 2023 had 105. He should be able to move up to maybe 2nd, which would pass Isaac Bruce, who in 1995 had 119. But Cooper Kupp is out of reach. In 2021, Cooper Kupp had 145 receptions, so he would need 43 receptions in the next 3 games. Highly doubtful. Not impossible, but doubtful. The odds are pretty slim. But 102 receptions, another 100 reception game for Puka Nacua. Now, Matthew Stafford for the Rams in passing yards on a career level now, with his 368 yards past Jared Goff, believe it or not, in this game. Very interesting game. The dynamics going on in this game, but past Jared Goff to move into 4th all-time in passing yards for the Los Angeles Rams with 18,422. That'll be as far as he gets. He could go to number 1 next year, if he played, he would have a chance, depending on how many yards he got this season, but he's not going to pass anybody else. Roman Gabriel's third with over 22,000. So there's a huge amount of stats going on in this game. And I know this podcast ran long, but I wanted to get that Rams game in, a big game for them to continue to hold on to first place, a rough game for Detroit Lions. And unfortunately for them, they did not win. And they're going to have to basically win out and have some help to make the playoffs. All right, we'll call it a wrap right there, and appreciate you listening. Find this podcast on YouTube where you'll see all these stats that I've mentioned. You'll see all these top 10 charts of every game that we talked about and who the top players are throughout the history of those particular teams, whether it's season or career level type of stats. Again, appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe. You can find it at Just the Stats NFL on YouTube, where you can watch it or listen. Also, you can listen, of course, on Spotify, Apple, or whatever app you might use to listen to your podcast. All right. So for NFL Top 10s for Tuesday, I'm out for today. I'll see you tomorrow.